Okay, Karen reminded me, that's good. Wellness Watch, and we host the CRS Workgroup. I'm glad to be here, not with a community, but live in the city of Norfolk. That's where Wellness Watch's office is located. And I'm sure someone from the city will be on, but we're class 5. Okay, that's it.
The camera very awkwardly right in front of my face. Hi, everybody. My name is Madison Teeter. I work with Mary Carson Stiff at Wetlands Watch. I'm Wetlands Watch's program associate. I'm also a CFM. I'm just assistant MC with the work group. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Renee
There's a new member.
I know, I'm so excited. Hi, everyone, I'm Renee McKinnon. I'm with the City of Chesapeake Office of Emergency Management. I'll be taking over the CRS portion for Chesapeake from Bobby. So if anyone that knows Bobby, you don't get to see his smiling face anymore. And we do participate in CRS. Our rating, I believe, is 7.
Yep. So great, thanks for being here, Renee.
And I'm Mike Wilson, Section Chief for Resource Protection, James City County, CFM. We are class 5.
I'm Deirdre Wells. I'm the Chief Engineer for James City County. And as Mike said, we're Section 5. I'm also a CFM.
Great. Okay, and so then when okay, you're up since you just walked in. We're doing introduction.
No pressure.
Kathy Engel, Newport News, class 7. What else?
That's it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, before we get into the house. All right, so let's start online. I'm gonna go however I want. Amro Helwa. Please introduce yourself and indicate what community you're with. Go ahead, Amro, we can hear you.
Yes, this is Emro Halwa.
And what community are you with?
I work with Corps of Engineers, Norfolk District.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, great. From Colonial Beach.
Hi, I'm Karen Self Sullivan. I'm on the town council in Colonial Beach. I am a proponent of us trying to do CRS here. Our biggest problem is capacity, bandwidth, getting somebody to actually make it happen.
Thank you, Karen. John Bateman. Hello, John. Introduce yourself. Okay, John. Rich. Hey, Rich.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rich Sabota. I'm with FEMA Region 3. I'm their insurance specialist, and I'm also the regional CRS coordinator. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Good to see your face. Okay, John, you can try again. If not, passing to Marissa Jones. All right, Marissa.
She might be driving instead.
Oh, yeah, Marissa, you might be driving. Well, she did post in the chat. All right, when you're ready, Marissa. Okay, Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Noose. I'm the Environmental Compliance Officer for the City of Pocosin.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us. Nice to see you. Tom.
Which Tom?
You. Thomas. Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom Coghill. I'm the building official of James City County.
Class 5.
I want to say hi, Tom Brockenbrough too, because he's the other Tom.
Hey, Tom, and he has no microphone, which I did know. So Tom Brokenraw from Accomack County, class 6. Mark Cluck.
Mark Cluck, Town of Smithfield. We are currently not participating in CRS.
Thanks for being here, Mark. Okay, Matt Down.
incredibly.
Matt Allen, DCR Program Manager for the Virginia Coastal Resilience Master Plan and the Virginia Flood Protection Master Plan.
Wonderful. Hey, Matt. John Bateman, coming back to you. Obviously,
Good morning, John Bateman, Senior Planner with the Northern Neck Planning District Commission.
Okay, thanks, John. And in the room, we have Hy, who joined us from Newport News, just since he's the last one to introduce himself.
Thank you.
Perfect. Marissa Jones is here, Virginia Beach Office of Emergency Management. She's the mitigation specialist, and she's not sure what's going on with her microphone. Hey to everybody. Virginia Beach is a class 7. Alyssa Flatt.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Flatt. I'm the CRS coordinator in Norfolk, and we are a class 5. Tristan is not probably going to be here, or she might be later this morning. She has a site plan meeting.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alyssa. And for those that don't know, Alyssa's taken over for Tristan as CRS coordinator. Debbie.
Good morning, everyone. Debbie Messmer, the State Hazard Mitigation Officer for the Virginia Department of Emergency Management.
Debbie, thank you. Daryl.
Daryl Walker, Stormwater Program Manager, City of Petersburg.
Daryl Walker.
And I'm Daryl Smith. I'm environmental consultant in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. I'm a CFM and a professional wetland scientist.
Wonderful. So nice to have our West Virginia contingent here. And Daryl, thank you, Walker, for joining from Petersburg. As you said in the chat, Petersburg is a non-CRS participating community. Okay. Sorry, Daryl Walker, did you want to say anything? Go ahead.
I just said correct. So. Yeah, just affirming.
You're correct. Wonderful. I'm glad to be correct. Okay. Not always a given. Okay, Christy Parrish.
Hi, I'm Christy Parrish with James City County. I'm the zoning administrator in CFM and glad to be here, and we're class 5.
Great. Okay, Ken Somerset. I see you're unmuted, Ken, but probably audio issues. Ken Somerset, City of Pocosin, class 7, and building official, CFM. Sorry, Ken. Liz.
Good morning, guys. No video for me today. This is Liz Chesley with Timmons Group. I'm also currently doing staff augmentation at the City of Chesapeake for the Stormwater Project Manager position, and we'll be meeting with Renee shortly. Had helped out with the CRS accreditation in this role.
Wonderful. Yes, that's great, Liz. Okay, Dana.
Hello, good morning. Danon O'Connell, Senior Planner of City of Charlottesville. We are not in CRS, but hopefully someday in the future we will be.
Wonderful. Thanks, Danon. Danon was formerly with Save the Coast. Okay, Luke Peters. Luke Peters. Okay, Nora Jackson.
Good morning. My name is Nora Jackson, and I am a resiliency planner with the Northern Virginia Regional Commission.
Hey, Nora. How about Norman?
Norm Goulet, Northern Virginia Regional Commission.
Awesome. Greta.
Hi, Greta Hawkins with the City of Hampton. I'm the CRS coordinator, and we are class 7 right now.
Great. Jenny.
Good morning, this is Jenny Sneed, AMT. I'm currently working with Henrico County on their entry into CRS. And excuse me, I apologize. I have a new computer and I'm still trying to figure it out. So I have no video right now. But their CAV, after many years of waiting, is now scheduled for August.
Okay, great. August. Okay. William Knuckles. Okay, Luke Peters. Circling back.
Hey folks, sorry about that. Luke Peters with the Berkeley Group, doing WIP and CZM work for a number of PDCs.
Okay, great. Thanks for being here. All right, and anybody that I did not get, unmute. Go for it. I got everybody. Okay, wonderful. All right, let's get started. So, thanks everybody for being here. Welcome to the May 2020 CRS Workgroup. I'm going to launch a poll for those people online to ensure that you can get your continuing education credit. I'm going to leave this one up for a while, so please just fill it out when you can. Those people in the room are going to automatically receive CECs if they're eligible. But if you are online and you want continuing education credits that are free, fill out the poll. Otherwise, you cannot get it. Okay, we already did this. We're just ahead, I guess. Future meeting dates, I think I mentioned this last time. We have been really lucky to work with kind of a new facilities person here in the city of Newport News to get all of our dates moving into 2023 signed up ahead of time. This will hopefully alleviate any kind of need to shift to a different location or shift to the smaller room next door, which does not have as great, technological equipment, and so we're really glad to have this room available. So all these dates are available on the CRS Workgroup website, on the landing page, and so you should have no problem filling them in. As conflicts arise, we'll modify and work with the city. So if you ever see a conflict on our future workgroup dates, please let me or Madison know ASAP, and we'll try to get that fixed. Yeah. And Ben McFarland has just joined us from the Hampton Planning District. Hey, everybody. And then we had someone else, Tammy Clary, joined us also online. Tammy, if you want to unmute and introduce yourself, you're welcome to.
Hi, yes, sorry, I just got in, but good morning. This is Tammy Clary. I'm here with the town of Smithfield. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so CECs, you should really expect 1.5 per meeting. In January, we had 2.5, and I don't really know how to explain that, and I definitely haven't asked questions about it. This might be a new normal, in which case, huzzah, but I don't know. Probably not, is what I'm guessing. I think it was a fluke. Nevertheless, it just kind of illustrates the great value of this work group, in my opinion, to offer these free continuing education credits. This is my every meeting plug for the Virginia Floodplain Management Association. This is the state chapter of the Association of State Floodplain Managers. That's the membership organization nationally for all floodplain management professionals. ASFPM is the entity that provides the certified floodplain manager certification. And so we in Virginia have our chapter, and it is the FMA, and it only costs $25 to join. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a direct contact for VFMA? Because I have a receipt that says I paid for my membership, but they keep telling me I should renew. I'm like, I've emailed you, I've sent you the receipt. Do we have an actual person, or because the only contact information I can find is
the Virginia Floodplain Management email? And was that in the past like month?
It's been like 2 months.
Okay, so that would probably be because the president is on maternity leave, so Kristen's just had a baby.
Okay.
And so I guess that's why. I was on the board, just cycled off a couple months ago.
I just want to straighten it out. I'm like, has anybody else had this issue?
Well, I was in charge of membership, and so I'm not anymore. So I'm not saying that that's why. I'm saying I don't think anybody else is taking over the responsibility.
That's fine.
So I will help you. That's what I'm saying.
I'll email you.
Okay.
We'll chat.
And send me all the stuff because I still have access to the email address.
Okay.
We'll figure that out. Membership begins in the calendar year. And so it used to be that we did membership a different way, but we've changed over like in the past 2 years, maybe 3 years. So FYI, January 1, $25, pretty sweet gig. And it's actually a slightly less if you join as a corporate member. And so some localities that have a lot of CFMs can join at the corporate level, and it's just a slight discount. You get your logo on the website and stuff like that. So it's a sponsorship. Okay. Our ISO representative is Emily Schmidt for the state of Virginia. She's not on the call today. She typically joins all of our CRS Workgroup meetings, which is helpful, and has done a really nice job of fielding questions and concerns. And so if you have a question about Virginia, or if you're having issues with your ISO assigned representative, who is not Emily, delays, etc., email Emily. She's the person that should be able to help you. Okay. We're going to hear from Debbie from VDEM about how the FEMA grant cycle is going. But I just wanted to reshare the slide that you all have seen in our last work group meeting to make sure everybody is aware of this increase in the pre-calculated benefits for FEMA's grant programs. This is a big deal because it allows a higher threshold of value of property when you want to mitigate through elevations or through acquisitions. Not having to meet the benefit cost analysis is the outcome of this increased threshold. And so if your mitigation action is this value or less, then you do not have to submit a VCF. And that is a big pain in the neck, of course, to submit. So FYI, this is helpful for those working on mitigation in Virginia. Okay, without further ado, I'm gonna pass it along to Debbie to provide us an update. Thank you, Debbie.
Thanks, Mary Carson. And I would turn my video on, but then I wouldn't be able to read my update. So I'm gonna,
no worries.
Yeah, I'm gonna forgo the video. But that's a great picture. Sorry, I don't even look like that anymore. Okay, so I'm gonna do, I swear, like my hair just grew and grew and did not stop during COVID. So that's my pre-COVID straight hair. But so I'm gonna give a quick update on 2020, which was the inaugural year of BRIC and the probably 19th year of FMA. And then I'll give an update on 2021. So it was in March of this past year, FEMA finally awarded all of our 2020 BRIC project applications. Unfortunately, we didn't have any, what I like to call structural projects, so any large scale projects. All the applications that were awarded or projects that were awarded were part of our state set aside. So in the first year, 2020, BRIC had a state set aside of $600,000 federal. So that's all we got was the $600,000 federal, which was about $775,000 total for, I think it's 4 mitigation plans and a couple of project scoping projects. So that was a little disappointing, but FEMA also only awarded or only identified about 22 projects out of the 900 and some, or really 600 and some structural projects that they had. So it was a tough year for everyone. For FMA 2020, we had quite a few projects that were identified for further review that last summer. And unfortunately, we did not get our awards yet. And initially we were just waiting patiently. But we did find out that because of the Build America, Buy America Act, there are some restrictions on FEMA being able to award the flood mitigation assistance projects right now. So we're hoping that in the next few months, FEMA will work through those restrictions and we will see our awards for FMA 2020. We're at about 5 months past when we usually get them. So on to 2021. So this past January, Virginia submitted 15 project applications. Some of those were scoping. We didn't actually submit any planning applications. So it was just scoping and structural projects. We totaled $315 million. FEMA's going to give out about a little over $1 billion for BRIC. So we're hoping for maybe 1 or 2 structural projects in there. The peer review process, so the applications were due the end of January. The peer review process was completed in March. And last week, which this is a new thing, FEMA announced almost $100 million in awards already, mostly for planning and scoping projects. Most of these are projects that are part of that set aside that I just mentioned for FY 2020. This year's set aside was increased to $1 million federal. So FEMA's awarded mostly planning and scoping projects for some states. Virginia has not been awarded anything yet. So we're just waiting on that. And then, so that's FY 2021. So we anticipate sometime around late summer, the second round will at least be identified for further review. So essentially the projects that were peer reviewed were part of the competitive project pool, we should hear sometime mid to late summer if they've been, which ones have been identified for further review. So, and then lastly was this past year, FY 2021 FMA. So we submitted 5 applications totaling $22 million. Of the 5, 2 of them were elevation projects and 1 was a pumping station project and 2 were kind of community flood mitigation type of projects. Last week, FEMA announced 22 applications for $25 million will be awarded to 5 states so far. We're not one of those 5 states. There is $160 million available in FMA. We typically fare pretty well in FMA. In the past, we've gotten anywhere usually from like $20 to $40 million for flood mitigation assistance. So hopefully the 5 projects that we submitted will go forward. But I think they had a few, usually they have closer to the $200 million mark. I think they had like $350 million this past year in flood mitigation applications. So a little bit more competitive than it's been in the years past. But that's all my report, Mary Carson. So let me know if there's any questions or comments.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, questions.
I see Daryl's question. Yes, Trina is still with VDEM. So I will say though, Daryl, because you're with Petersburg, I believe. They are now, we have a new grant administrator. Her name is Taylor. Her last name is Charles, and not to be called Charles Taylor, which is what everyone does. Poor girl. But Taylor is the grant administrator for VDEM Region 1. And so you could reach out to her. I'll put her information in the chat. And we definitely, I'm on those emails about that the Corps has been sending out. So I don't know if it's related to that specific project, but Taylor can certainly help you apply for an HMGP grant. We do have an opportunity that's opening up. And let me just speak to that right quick, since everyone, the whole state is available to apply for that. So we have the hazard mitigation grant program, which is what Daryl's referencing there. It comes when a disaster, a presidentially declared disaster has been deemed for Virginia. So I get a pot of money out of that disaster declaration. And this past winter, we had a severe ice storm that was declared. So we have a pot of money that will be opening up probably sometime around June, July, August, sometime in midsummer. I believe we're going to open it up for applications. And with the hazard mitigation grant program, the entire state is eligible. I will say that the jurisdictions that were declared tend to have higher priority, but a lot of times we don't even get applications from those from those areas. So I would certainly encourage anyone and everyone to apply for the HMGP grant program. And we'll do an e-blast through our grants email system. So if you're not receiving emails from that, I'll put that link in the chat as well, so that you can get those notifications. They notify about about BRIC, about FMA, about HMGP. They also notify about any of the Homeland Security grants, or we just use it for all of our notifications coming out of the VDEM grant section. But I'll put Taylor's information in the chat as well. Thanks, Daryl.
Thank you.
With the HMGP, so Debbie, where is it's my understanding that there's COVID money attached to HMGP. Is that correct?
Yeah, so initially FEMA, typically we get in Virginia, we get 15% of any declared disaster. Well, COVID was a declared disaster, but FEMA said for about a year, they said, hey, we don't know if we're going to award HMGP because the disaster was so ginormous that the HMGP amount would be huge. Well, after BRIC was awarded or identified, after the projects were identified last summer and everyone was kind of up in arms because there were 600 competitive applications and FEMA only chose 22 of them, they then said, oh, we're going to award HMGP COVID. So they only awarded about 4%. They gave each state a specific amount of money. So what we did as a state in Virginia is we identified, we have a study, an analysis was done on localities across Virginia that have vulnerable populations and a high flood risk. And so we identified those localities and we targeted them for HMGP COVID applications. We also looked at the BRIC applications that were not identified for funding in FY 2020 to look at funding some of those applications as well. So we have some funding still remaining. At this time, we haven't decided if we're opening up this period because we really are trying to focus on these vulnerable communities and try to get some mitigation projects to help them. So we actually hired a contractor to work with some of these vulnerable communities, and they'll start doing that next month to see if we can identify good mitigation projects and then help them write those grant applications and get them kind of started on that process. So for right now, the HMGP COVID money is not necessarily up for grabs like the recent winter storm disaster HMGP money is.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful to clarify. And what is 4%? What's the value of that?
Yeah, so the amount of money. So and they say 4%, but see, that's not even right either, because I feel like we got less. So it's also FEMA. So when FEMA announced this in August of last year, they send what's called a lock-in letter. So we got our lock-in letter, and it was for, I think it was $53 million federal. Okay, so we have $53 million federal. Well, HMGP is always 75% federal, 25% non-federal. And in the past, the state has contributed 20% for only HMGP, the state has contributed 20% of a match. So that leaves a 5% match with the applicant. Well, so we had about $67 million that we were going to be working with. Well, about a month ago, FEMA came back and said any disaster declaration that occurred between January 1st, I believe it's 2020, and December 31st, 2021. It might not be January 1st, 2020. Because I know it's January 1st, 2021 at a minimum, because we didn't have any disasters in 2020. But any disaster that occurred, the federal share amount is actually going to be 90% instead of 75%, which sounds fantastic because, you know, that's the feds picking up even more to get these mitigation grants going. The problem is it lessens the total amount that we have available because we only get 90% now. We only get, so 90% of 100% is a lot less than 75 of 100. So we actually lost about $11 million total that we could use. And FEMA also stated it was mandatory that we do this 90-10. So we have 90% federal funding. And then in the state law, it states that any disaster declaration in Virginia has to be met within a minimum of a 10% state match. So now we have a 10% state match. So really any of these grant any of the projects that we use are going to be pretty much 100% federal and state funded, which is fantastic. It just lessens the amount of money that we have available to send out to everybody. But that is where we are in terms of how much money is available. And I don't have the amount of money available for this upcoming disaster that I mentioned. Off the top of my head, I think it's going to be around $4 to $5 million total. So not a huge amount, but it will fall under, I'm sorry, the new one does not fall under the 90-10 because it was declared this year, and this year is back to the 75-25. So I apologize. That will be a normal 75-25, which typically in the past, the state has picked up 20%. So usually it's 75 federal, 20 state, 5 local, or not 5 applicant.
So the HMGP COVID money is subject to the 90%.
It is, yes.
Okay, perfect. And that amount is like ballpark 50?
Let me hold on just one second. I'll tell you what it is. It is give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. It is, the total project amount available is $57.5 million. So like I said, we lost about $11 million because of that.
So that means, do the localities that are falling under that award designation that the state has made, vulnerable communities, high flood risk communities, do those localities know that they have been identified as such? Has there been like a touch made to them, or is that what the contractor is doing?
Yeah, so last summer was when we actually identified these 40 localities. We actually held regional workshops with these 40 localities to kind of talk about their risk, talk about mitigation. We had DCR, we had DHCD on the calls to have kind of just talk about like overall response and mitigation and recovery. So yes, most of them should know. We had pretty good participation in those workshops. And, you know, we might end up with some project applications outside of those, but for right now, that our focus for right now is the contractor's focus for right now will be the 40. Now, if we have, for example, we had a brick application in 2020 for a community that they were not, the whole community was not identified as a vulnerable community, but the specific location of this mitigation project was identified as a vulnerable community. Like when we looked at this, the CDC Social Vulnerability Index, like, so we're not saying that if you're not one of the 40, you can't apply. We just haven't opened it up. So if someone were to reach out to me and say, you know, hey, I've got this town and they are certainly, you know, or a community, whatever, this neighborhood, they're certainly a vulnerable community. We could definitely talk about opportunities that are there for that. We're just not really advertising. So we're not opening up the application period because we have a lot of project applications that we are trying to get through, that we have already targeted specific vulnerable communities.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Debbie? Feel free to unmute if you're online. Okay, yeah, Ben's got one.
Debbie, has there been any, we've had some conversations with some of our localities and about some of the applications they made for BRIC. And I just wonder, you know, given our track record, and I know it's, you know, it's a new program, has there been any feedback or you know, kind of follow up from FEMA about the kinds of things they're expecting or are leaning towards funding for that? I think we had some disappointed localities here in Hampton Roads and would like to avoid putting that much effort into applications that are unlikely to get funded.
No, absolutely. I mean, that is certainly our biggest, I guess, complaint as well. So when when the applications that weren't identified for further review in 2020, we met with many of, I'm on mute. We met with many of the localities to talk about what we saw as part of the process, or I'm sorry, what FEMA identified as like some of the, like why these 22 applications made it. So some of the things, and I used to have it on my desktop and I don't have it now because I got a new computer, but some of the things that were mentioned by FEMA that were specific to these 22 applications that were identified was building codes. So there's a large number of points that are given if the state or local jurisdiction has adopted the most recent building codes. Well, in 2020, we were at the 2015 building codes. So the point selections were 0, 10, and 20. So we only got 10 points for that. This past year in 2021, we actually had to fight FEMA. They were going to give us 10 again because technically communities didn't have to start implementing 2018 until July 1st of this year. But we fought FEMA and said, hey, you're not even going to award projects before then. So by the time you award these projects, they're going to have to go by 2018. And they finally said, yes, we agree. So they're giving us the full 20 points. That's going to make a difference. So that was huge. Every single community that they mentioned, that was awarded, received the full 20 points. The other one that was every single community had addressed the FEMA lifelines and had addressed at a minimum 2 FEMA lifelines that their project was benefiting. So those 2 things were pretty big. There was only a couple projects that were nature-based solutions, which was kind of surprising in my eyes. The projects ranged anywhere from like 2 million to like 40 million. So I don't necessarily feel like there was they were only looking at large projects. 2 million is a lot of money, but it's not in the grand scheme of things. It wasn't super large. But they certainly had a wide range there. the BSEG score played a part. I believe everyone, if this is me off the top of my head, I believe all the communities had a BSEG score of less than 5. So those were what came out of FY 2020, which was literally just some statistics. I don't necessarily think, like, it wasn't like I thought, oh, well, let me say this too. The other thing that came out was the projects, what was identified as a benefit in the projects was not only protecting critical infrastructure, which was huge, but also what was the economic benefit that was addressed in a lot of these projects, and what was like the whole community benefit to this project. I think those were kind of the big things that I felt like I took out of the 2020. So in 2021, myself and one of my other grant administrators, Amy, we sat on the panel review in March to review applications. And that was huge for us, because it really showed us what other localities were submitting as sub-grant applications. And we worked in small groups, like groups of 6, but it also told me at least who else was on these panels and what they were valuing as well. And one of the things I took from it was literally taking the technical and qualitative criteria and addressing them better, sentence by sentence. So the risk reduction criteria under the qualitative criteria has 3 or 4 sentences. So literally going in and having a document that took that risk reduction criteria and then wrote how this is addressing each of the criteria. That was really big on the qualitative side. Really painting the picture of how, or telling the story of how your project is gonna move, is gonna mitigate this risk and the benefits. So I think we are able to look at projects and know that there's some more things that we need to kind of have in our application. So one of the things that I'm going to try to task the contractors with is to almost create this like this document that each project can have, that they can submit with their application, that we attach in the FEMA system that says, here is how each of the criteria are met. I think that will help out a lot. But I understand your frustration, because believe me, I mean, we spent the entire month of January entering in these applications, working through the BCAs, like we were invested in these applications as well. And it is extremely, I mean, it's plain sucks. Like there's just no other better way to say it. Just plain sucks that you have $500 million and you just gave 22 applications. You awarded 22 applications. Like what kind of nonsense is that? And I think that's why HMGP COVID, did come out, because it was nonsense. So we have $1 billion this year. So we're double the money. I will say the other thing that FEMA does is they do a technical review on project applications that are so when they're ranked, they take the top $2 billion for this year coming up. Last year it was 1 billion. So they take double the amount of the award. So they'll take the top 2 billion and they'll do a technical review, which will include a BCA and like a project, like just basically project eligibility review. And they'll write up a document and send it to us to say, hey, your project may not have been, it might have been in between the 1 billion and 2 billion, but here's where we saw deficiencies or where we saw good stuff, and here's where you can improve on it. So hopefully that will be helpful too, because they've increased the amount of money that's available. They've also increased the national technical review amount that we're going to get. So they'll look at the top 2 billion, but that still leaves $2 to $3 billion worth of projects that won't have any review and will get no documentation on at all. Like we get nothing from FEMA, and anything we do get, we would pass on, but we just don't get anything from them.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Debbie. When you mentioned the lifelines, you said, I just want to make sure I understood correctly, because this is new with BRIC. This lifeline narrative wasn't present for PDM or what BRIC used to be. You said only 2 applicants included lifelines in their application correctly? Is that what you said?
No, sorry. Each of the applications addressed at a minimum 2 of the FEMA lifelines. So let me just, here they are right quick. I'll just share my screen because you said you did make me a, yeah, let me just share my screen right quick, just so you guys can see.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you should be good.
All right, there we go. So these are the lifelines right here. Can you see them? Yeah. So each of the project applications identified 2 of the lifelines. Now, you know, there are certain project applications that I think you could easily do that, you know. So for example, if you're doing something to a pumping station, you could say food, water, shelter. You could say energy in terms of power. You could say hazardous material. So there's different, I mean, you can safety and security. I mean, there's a lot of different, you know, ways that you can relate the community lifelines to your project application. And I know that in the first year, some 2 years, we in Virginia did not do as good of a job as documenting that. Now in the FEMA system, the narrative space isn't huge for it. Like it's actually, if I remember, it's just a drop down, pick your lifeline, and then add a comment if you want. Like it's not like a mandatory field. So maybe we make it a mandatory field and we start really having people identify the lifelines and document why these lifelines are important to their application.
Yeah, and you felt like 2 was too few? I guess that was my real question.
No, 2 was just what everybody did. Like we personally, I mean, I would say a lot of our applications only addressed 1 lifeline.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so what FEMA said was each of the applications they chose had at a minimum of 2.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful.
Okay.
Any other questions for Debbie? I think this has been really valuable. I'm very grateful for your time. Thanks for walking through it so diligently and specifically.
Absolutely. And I'll put Taylor's email in for, actually, I'll put each of our grant administrators in so you can reach out, and I'll put what VDEM regions they're with. Unfortunately, Region 5, we do so much mitigation in Region 5 that it's, we're kind of all over the place, but I'll try to kind of put where, you know, what we have and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or put it in the chat.
Great.
Thanks, Mary Carson.
Okay. Thank you, Debbie. Really appreciate it. Okay. All right. So this is not a poll, but I just thought, you know, we could sort of chat about it. And if you're online, you can use the chat function, and in person, we can chat, obviously, amongst ourselves about this, you know, these questions about FEMA grants, because I mean, I have a little bit of a bee in my bonnet about FEMA grants being incredibly burdensome for most localities to navigate. Obviously, you know, windfall of federal resources means lots of money for localities for resilience, but if you don't have the capacity to navigate a grant program, understand how to write an application, then that money means nothing to you and your community. And so Wellens Watch wants to better understand, you know, where everybody's feeling on this issue. We are talking with some of our congressional delegation about some of these threshold issues, and hoping that we can see some change. FEMA is pretty immovable as you all know, so I don't know how much impact, we'll have, but I just think that it's a worthwhile discussion, and I love that VDM's hiring a contractor to provide technical grant writing assistance for those 40 vulnerable communities. That is huge, and we've been advocating for state agencies to adopt a similar method of grant writing for the Community Flood Preparedness Fund, or other huge, HUD grants, and this notion that local staff have the time or energy to learn a federal grant program is laughable in many communities. And so that's my soapbox. Really happy to hear about VDM doing it, practicing that, real technical assistance. And so if anybody has any thoughts about it, I'd love to hear. Matt Dallin. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Mary Carson. I just wanted to kind of add into the great work that Debbie's doing. We've been coordinating with her and looking at what that BRIC criteria is. We have a lot of data, the Coastal Resilience Master Plan, that isn't necessarily aligned with those lifelines, but could be in the future, right? So we have the opportunity to help provide support and provide that data to support these grant applications. So it's something we've been discussing and hopefully can take some action on moving forward.
Excellent. And DCR has definitely been talking about technical assistance at the local level, at least in the prior administration. And so hopefully, that's something that can happen in the future. Thank you, Matt. Anybody else? Oh, and I saw, and I was going to mention this, but John did end up coming to the meeting. Northern Neck Planning District Commission applied to BRIC and CFPF for an update to our regional hazard mitigation plan, and to also make it a resilience plan or local resilience plan as required by the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. And John, those resources were received, which is great. Luke Peters from Berkeley Group, I think, GWRC was finally, I love that, awarded a BRIC grant for updating their hazard mitigation plan. He understands the process is pretty onerous. Yeah, definitely. Glad that they were awarded. And I know that there's been some initiative to make the GWRC plan also a local resilience plan. I understand that there was a little bit of political pushback in GWRC for some of the vulnerable communities language and some of the climate change language. I don't know if Luke, you have any background on that, but hopefully we'll try to make that hazard mitigation plan serve as many purposes as possible. And also be CRS compliant if possible, which Hampton Roads hazard mitigation plan, of course, has been CRS compliant, 300 points immediately. Bada bing, bada boom, lots of points. And it's a huge asset to every single one of the 20-some communities that are part of that plan. I don't know if the Berkeley group is actually writing that plan, but the more you can advocate for CRS compliance as other communities join the CRS program, it's just a lot. It's a lot. Anybody else have thoughts about this? Nope. Okay. Oh, great. Thanks, Luke. Good. Okay. So during the last presentation, which I missed due to a conference conflict, you heard from two fabulous people working in Pinellas, I said that right, County, Florida. And I just saw Lisa Foster last week and told her, how much great feedback we had received about her presentation.
and just, you know, thanked her again for speaking to us. They are the gold standard for regional PPI, as I'm sure y'all gathered from her presentation. And so this idea of regional PPI, we've talked about it in the past. CRS participation was like lower in class and in participation in general. So I thought it would make sense to kind of revisit in a discussion. The peninsula communities, when we talked about this about 4 years ago, seemed to express the most interest in banding together and creating something. I don't know if that's still the case. Discussion about Hampton Roads wide. Obviously, we have other regions participating in the work group now. We're not really just a Hampton Roads group anymore. We're Coastal Virginia, but also now we have people from outside of the coastal zone. And so this is not intended to be something we figure out today by any means, but I thought we could just sort of get initial feelings, do a little bit of just chatting about where folks are. Anybody? Peninsula, still want to play in the
I definitely think we're interested in if it's just kind of how that would come together. You know,
yeah,
obviously was it Pinellas? Is that what you said?
Yes.
We don't have the same situation as them because I asked them that question. They have the county runs it, and then each individual town, you know, the county pays for it and does it, and so it's, you know, we're a little different here because of all the different separate localities. So it just coming together would be, you know, how would we work that all out? I think I think it would be very beneficial because we all are connected.
Yeah, so much travel between localities, which I know is similar situation. Region. Yeah, the mechanics of it would be challenging. Anybody else? I know that like Norfolk doesn't, you know, they have a PPI, so I think, you know.
Yeah, and I think like for Chesapeake, we'd love to. It's just the mechanics, like you said. I mean, we don't have a CRS specific, so it's, you know, on top of everything else, so how the mechanics will work on top of that. Yeah, but it's definitely of interest.
Is that something that could HRPDC could, to question, not lead, but, you know,
facilitate
as we all turn and steer.
I know, but you know what I mean. You guys already have the structure in place to bring all these communities together. So that's, you know.
Yeah, I think, you know, in theory, hypothetically, sure. I think it would, the devil's in the details there. I would say, so we, as part of the last round of CFPF grants, we put in a capacity building grant that would look at support for local CRS participation. And one of those things was to look at how you would structure a regional PPI. You know, what would basically coming up with a plan for how you would do it. Because I think, you know, your point about how we're different from other regional PPIs, you know, other places where the region is the county, and the county just has, you know, a couple dozen or, you know, however many individual municipalities that we're just different here in Virginia. Special different, you know.
Sure.
But so yeah, it's a little bit, it is different. But yeah, I think certainly, I think the real issue would be to figure out kind of what would be the logistical effort involved with it? Because I think, you know, we already do a lot of things that I think, like we have outreach materials that we provide to localities already for credit with CRS. We have committees, but we would have to set up something different to comply with the minimum standards for PPI. But yeah, I mean, I think we'd be happy to look into it and then, you know, come up with a way to sustain it over time. So we I mean, well, hopefully, you know, get some funding, you know, from CFPF to look into that and to do some of that work, then we'll have an answer sooner rather than later. What we put in two applications, one for studies and one for capacity building. So if we did get those would be done within the next year or so. That would be the plan.
That's something you hired a consultant to do? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because CFPM won't pay for your staff, right?
That's true.
Oh, yeah, that's the one. Anybody else from DCR?
Daryl. That's okay. And Matt, understand any comments. Yeah, that's helpful.
And I did, we, after the presentation, and I think, one of the things that I looked at, I took away was, the data that they make available, and they've got the VAS online portal that has all those different tools, and that's something that, if we, we're a little short-staffed right now, like everyone is, but that's the kind of thing that we're trying to move our analytical data products toward, is to have it available in that kind of format. So we would already be doing that, and then you all can just reference whatever you would need. And then we've also, of course, got the elevation certificate database that actually is put together. You'll be getting some emails about soon. What's that? To get some, if there are any new certificates. So that kind of thing where, even if we don't do a PPI, to make those products available so that you could just grab them. That way you don't have to set them up yourselves individually. Something that we were also already looking at doing.
Yeah.
And Matt Simons had said, sorry, just keep remembering things. Well, after the presentation, because we were both at the conference and I decided to participate in the meeting, and Mary Carson decided to go and actually watch a session, but we were supposed to do conferences and had sent out an email because I had actually dropped off right as the PPI discussion was going to the Q&A, and then the internet just I think my computer died or something. It was just bad timing, but several localities I had sent out an email and they had suggested that they would be interested and supportive, and Matt Simons was one of those, even though Norfolk already has a PPI. So I think, it certainly sounds like we should have a chat, and I think, if we can have a small chat, but if we get that grant, we can have a much bigger chat.
Perfect.
So.
Good. We'll back to the chat. Yeah, Northern Neck, John Bateman has said that if they can get more CRS participation, they suspect that a regional PPI would be a good idea. I think that this is absolutely true in the Northern Neck and the Middle Peninsula, where fewer people, fewer localities. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Do you know if you can get credit for, if you have a local PBI and you have a regional PBI, can you get points for both, or can you just get points for one?
Yeah, that's on my to-do list to find out. I think that you can do both.
It would just be for Norfolk, for double dipping, right?
Yeah, just be, so far, Norfolk is the only PPI that's active in our immediate region. So yeah, I'm not sure how it would work, but I'm a part of the Norfolk PPI, and it's the type of thing where we can just absorb in. I don't see it that it would be in conflict. And in a regional PPI, each locality is responsible for disseminating information within their community anyway. So it's kind of like it's regional, but then local implementation. And Ben and I have talked about this, and the CRS Workgroup is obviously, a good vehicle from which some organization can play a part.
I know that PIOs for all the localities already meet with the EM folks.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they meet every month. They might meet every other month, but I was just talking with them last week about what stuff. So those conversations have already started. It's just a matter of organizing them and coming up with a plan to sustain it over time. I think that's the real trick there.
That's great. And Tom, speaking for the James City County crowd online, saying that he's happy to participate. So thanks, Tom. Hopefully the others are too. Greta.
They're walking out now. I'm kidding.
Greta, yes, is definitely interested in a regional PPI. Awesome. Good. Well, it's great to have
a little bit more consensus than we've had in the past, and we'll just follow along with the PDC's, ability to, hopefully they'll get that grant and then be able to really study it in more detail. For those that are outside of our immediate regions, down here in Hampton Roads and Hampton Roads adjacent, if you have any interest in talking about setting something like this up in your area, I could see the Northern Virginia contingent having success in a regional PPI scenario. So I don't know if the NOVA PDC people or regional commission want to have a conversation, offline later. Happy to talk about it. Want to provide whatever support is helpful to y'all. Okay, cool. Nora, great. Okay, so I thought we'd do a poll just, for the purpose of getting these credits. So we're going to launch it. You're online. This is really just intended to get these CFM points. So it's certainly intended to inform future outreach, but sort of aimed at readiness for the sake of CECs. Okay, so as a part of Wetlands Watch's ability to run and manage the CRS Workgroup, we do this through the Coastal Zone Management Program grants. We've been receiving grants from CZM for years and years now to support our ability to stand up here and host these meetings. And we have coming up in this new fiscal funding year, which begins in October, we are going to start doing CRS training videos. And to Karen's note in the chat, it's okay if you're not familiar with what a PPI is or whatever, that's fine. It's really just intended to get the certified full play managers continuing education credits. The program for public information is a way to pool outreach activities in a community that is participating in the CRS program, and it is a credit multiplier. So probably should have led with a little bit more explanation, but that's what it's about.
You're gonna have to stop sharing your screen since you're only sharing PowerPoint.
Yes, I have to change my share.
Yep.
There you go. Okay, so as part of our CRS CZM grant, we're doing a lot of different things in the next year. One of these things includes kind of beefing up the individual CRS activity training work. So we've talked about doing this in the past, but it has not, we haven't really come to any conclusions about how we want to do it until now. We thought that a lot of the activity-specific training could happen during our CRS workgroup meetings, but I think that it's helpful for everybody to hear from people other than me. And so the kind of initial thinking is to create these pre-recorded videos where Wetlands Watch staff will walk through one specific CRS activity, and maybe two if they're related and it makes sense. Go into detail that kind of obviously is manual driven, but not manual boring, and has some anecdotal information about what other communities are doing in Virginia first, but then also nationally if we know about it. So tricks for documentation, a better explanation of how the credit points are awarded, because some of those mathematical equations are a nightmare, and just kind of what you really need to know. We've done this with 420 in the past. That's open space preservation. That makes sense. That's what Wetlands Watch cares most about. So obviously that's the one that we've really done. But I think, we're going to work to expand that a little bit. And so these videos would be posted on the CRS Workgroup website. And then there would be some way for us to know that you're watching it so that you can be awarded continuing education credits for the training that you'll receive. So we have created a Google form that I'm going to put in the chat for those people on Zoom. And then I will send around an email, and it's obviously going to be posted, hyperlinked in the presentation slides. And we just request that y'all fill this out with your interests. So what we've done is we've really broken out the activities by series. So 300 series, you can select as many of these as you like. 400 series. 430 is broken out in great detail because there are so many higher regulatory standards that are varied, significantly varied. So take a look at this, fill it out when you can, pass it around to folks that are not participating in the meeting today. And please give us your feedback. We'll aggregate all the responses and we'll send it out a bunch, not annoyingly, but diligently. And based off of everybody's responses, we'll select 2 for this grant term. And the idea is that we can build up a nice repository of CRS information, activity specific, and then people can go back and watch it whenever. So no time constraints on y'all, trying to make it as easy as possible.
And I see online you're having trouble accessing the form. I apologize for that. I will change that setting after the meeting.
Okay, can I do that right now while we're?
I don't think so. I was trying to do it before. We'll send it out in the post-meeting email that we always send out a couple days afterwards, and we'll make sure that it works. I apologize for that.
Okay. All right, so.
It's my personal email.
Well, I did it real quick.
Just kidding.
Okay, all right, so please don't forget to fill that out. Hopefully we're not gonna lose your momentum, those people on the Zoom call. Okay, so as a part of this current CZM grant, we're creating maps and graphics that show CRS data. So visual tools that will help kind of articulate how the state is doing in CRS participation. So it'll be pretty, simple, like participating CRS communities, overlaid with maybe community flood preparedness fund applications, and then a breakdown of credit scores according to each community. It's not going to be super fancy, but it's just intended to drive interest in specific programs, improved upon, and serve as a resource, hopefully, for staff in the event that you need to talk to city council or any county boards about increased capacity support for this initiative or increased support for a specific program that is creditable under the CRS program. So if you have any opinions about how these resources could be developed and what specific data you would like to see included, please feel free to reach out to me or Madison. Ross Weaver from Wetlands Watch is the one who's going to be creating these graphics. And if it's possible to help do something that would really be a benefit to you all, that's obviously the goal. Okay, and you can obviously put any information that you want to share in the chat as well. Good. All right, John. Yep, anything to encourage participation. for elected and citizens. Yes, that is the first goal, absolutely, for the project. Thank you, John.
MC,
Yeah.
going back real quick, just about something, for the training, you know, a lot of CFMs are also planners.
Yes.
Or engineers, and I know that we can double count things, we can get credits for both. So I know John Harbin on our staff is the professional development officer for APA Virginia.
Okay.
So it's, you know, they'll sponsor stuff, and that way there's no cost to this group to get them registered and everything, and they'll take care of that. There's a form you fill out, but that shouldn't be too difficult.
Okay. That's good. That's great. So I'll reach out to John. And I think any certifications that, you know, we can get for the trainings will be the objective. So planning, I don't know, I think there's an EM certification. Is there? Someone asked me one time about that. I was like, I have no idea. Okay, that's really great. Thank you. Okay. All right, so we're gonna do a little bit of conversation about risk rating. Yay! No repeat from what's previously been presented in our lunch and learn, in this work group, nothing like that. Tom Roth has asked a question, and he's traveling to the dentist, and so he might not be on, I can't recall what the time was for his appointment, but he sent an email asking, is anyone having increased calls from insurance agents as a result of risk rating 2.0? No? Okay. Well, they apparently are. And people are asking for elevation certificates, saying that their insurance company said you should get one. And obviously this is counter to what we've been told under risk rating 2.0, the whole, not the whole point, but one of the big driving outcomes of the new rating technology is that you do not need elevation certificates. So it's supposed to be an easier rating method. I don't know if we're just still on the line because he messaged and said that he has something else going on, but I can share what I have been hearing. ECs are obviously, or not obviously, ECs are no longer required for your rate under risk rating 2.0, but you can submit one to help ground truth your rate as it comes out of the rating engine. What some of the FEMA folks have been saying and telling full plan managers is that ECs could improve a rating. And so not by like $1,000, but by like a couple hundred. So a couple hundred annual savings versus, you know, the like $350 that it costs to get an EC could really be worthwhile. Mm-hmm. There is a chance that the EC could not have a positive impact on your rate. If it has a negative impact, you are not required to use the EC at all in the rate. You can say, just kidding, that is the engine. That is perfectly acceptable, according to FEMA.
Can insurance companies, like, is their own policy require that? Because I think that's what I'm hearing. Some, like, this insurance company says I have to have it.
Interesting. To my knowledge, they don't have
the ability to do that.
Well, they're a private company, and so it's just like a bank giving you a loan. Their product, well, if they're right, your own. I don't know. So I don't think there's anything stopping a insurance company from requesting that you have one, but it is not required for the rate. And I don't know about the authority question. Rick, Rich, are you on? Yes, raise your hand. Is it allowed to, are they allowed to do that?
Hi, everybody. Okay, so since I've been in this business for a long time, one of the things I've realized is that there's an awful lot of whisper down the lane that goes on. This is all by way of saying, if you have any specifics that I can follow up on and see exactly what's happening, happy to do that for you. From what I'm listening to so far, I think that this may kind of be an echo to the situation of rating that we used previously, where in some cases an insurance agent may have received a elevation certificate several years ago. That elevation certificate did not help the rating for that particular policyholder, and then years went by, that elevation certificate did or would help that policyholder, but of course it was somewhere in some dusty file, and the agent in this case would get dinged for not using the elevation certificate for rating the current policy, even though they had received it years ago. Long-winded story, hope that makes sense. But that's kind of what my initial impression is here. But again, happy to follow up on any specific information that you have, and we'll see what's happening. I think Mary Carson said correctly that the companies and the insurance agents, since they are private individuals, private companies, can institute procedures involving their policyholders, prospective policyholders, that may be different from the general requirements that we have. I'll stop there and open up for questions.
Yeah, Tom, if you can unmute, otherwise feel free to ask your question in the chat.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm driving, so I can't type in the chat. So one thing we're also getting is, you know, the insurance agent is calling and asking, well, how far is it from the water? So it's not just the elevation certificate questions, and I think I forgot to put that in my original question to you, Mary Carson, so I apologize. So yeah, just some of the things that is more determinant on the premium that they're getting quoted, that people are getting quoted, you know, again, distance to water and things like that, we're getting some questions about from agents.
Yeah, good point, Tom. And you did include that in your email, and I did include it on the slide. So that's definitely was going to be my next question. In addition to the ECs, these calls to ask about an agent determination for the other rating factors, what I have heard, and obviously Rich will hopefully confirm this, is that the agents cannot make modifications to those existing rating principles. They can only make modifications to things like square footage, number of floors, year built, replacement value, and construction type. And then with the EC, first floor elevation. Is that correct, Rich?
Yeah, you are correct, Mary Carson. Long story short, there are some things that are eligible, I should say, to be modified by the insurance agent and or the insured if they have more specific information than is supplied by the geolocation process of the risk rating methodology. That can be acceptable. That may help rates. I don't see any way how the question of how far are you from a water source can be really massaged through the agent or through the policyholder.
Yes.
I mean, I would think that the issue would be whether or not, like, how accurate the geolocation that FEMA has used for the system would be, right? I mean, I know the ones that we've looked at, it just depends on where you are, but they can be off by several hundred feet if you're in a rural area, so I mean, has that kind of, I know that some of the data that FEMA used for the engine is proprietary. Has that kind of error assessment been conducted to see are the points that are being used to represent the properties, are they actually where the house or the buildings are, or are they off by a few feet? Are they off by more than that? And is that something that, you know, if they're doing an elevation certificate that would have latitude and longitude coordinates on it, would that be something that could be corrected by the agent?
Okay, and again, the rating software, and I think this was already mentioned, is kind of a black box situation. It's a this methodology was tested out very thoroughly in many different geographical locations during the development process. Is it infallible? Absolutely not. Do we have information to learn from this process? Yes, we do. They're already talking about risk rating 2.1. But having said that, kind of the question, the question relative to the distance from the water source, let's say there's a discrepancy of 100 feet. Is that going to make any significant difference in the rating? I don't know.
But
Around here, yeah.
so Rich, there's no way, as I understood it, there's no way for a policyholder to challenge through their agent or otherwise the black box rating characteristics. That's correct, right?
Yeah, and keep in mind that the sheer number of variables that go into risk rating 2.0 methodology is kind of mind-boggling, and throw into that the different variables interact differently. Bear with me a moment, please. Yeah, we're still learning about the black box. We're still learning about the rating variables. Some information I think is going to be coming out over time, which will be helpful to all of our awareness. The bottom line for any policyholder in the National Flood Insurance Program is we are going to give them the best available rate that we possibly can using the rules that are currently in place. Those rules may change over time. We may have to go back and revisit certain situations. But again, on the specific item of distance from a water source, I'm not sure how that is derived. But having said that, I'm not sure how one would go about disputing the information that we've derived, especially since it's part of our geolocation process.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. Okay. Okay, yeah, so just some comments in the chat about distance to the water having variable consequences in our area. Okay, any other questions about this or comments? Thank you, Rich. I'm glad you were still on the call. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. One other point to be made. In the early stages of risk rating 2.0, we are kind of scrambling to play catch up in terms of number one, the reports that go along with it, and number two, the public awareness and outreach materials that go along with it as well. So I know we are somewhat behind on that one. We're playing a catch up game. I think from what I've seen so far, we're doing a pretty good job, but needless to say, we've got a long ways to go, but this is just absolutely totally brand new. And it's different in many respects from our old rating system. And from my point of view, it's a significant improvement over the older rating system. But having said that, yep, there's going to be bumps in the road. We encourage any information that we can use for feedback purposes to go back to our headquarters folks and see what responses they may have on that. Or there is that risk rating 2.0 general email mailbox that anyone is that's available for anyone to use. And I'll put that into the chat before this is over. Thanks, Mary Carson.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm just gonna we're not gonna talk about the CRS Next program that I learned about at ASFPM. We're gonna talk about that at the next meeting. It is not time sensitive, and so you can pass on it. I do want to provide just ever so quickly a couple things that I learned and confirmed relating to Risk Rating 2.0 at the Association of State Floodplain Managers Conference, which was held in Orlando last week. So there was a lot of discussion, and we of course have also been reporting out that the home elevations and flood vents as a financial incentive have been weakened under Risk Rating 2.0 in terms of financial benefit in a discount form. And I just want to note that FEMA has released a new document that's linked on the next page, and I can put a link in the chat, that shows that home elevations are receiving a substantial discount, not capped at a 5% discount like the flood vents, but significant percentages off of your rate. So that has been clarified by FEMA in response to the flood mitigation industry's response to it not being appearing to be included. The difference is that even if you have this percentage reduction in your rate, it's unclear how that percentage or how that change in the rate factors into the other rates. Does that make sense? So good news, the percentage is still being accounted for in terms of a mitigation benefit, but it may be the case that the elevations themselves, when weighed against other factors, are not as beneficial financially. The discount doesn't count as much, is the point. Okay. I also just, got clarity that existing SFHA policies that are increasing along the 18% or 25% glide path, for those policies, the CRS discount is baked in year one. So we talked about this. It's accounted for. You're not getting it. You are going to get the discount, and every CRS community should be hammering this home to everybody in this situation. It is, however, the case that preferred risk policies, which are going away, no longer. So this is just policies that are elective, not a part of the mandatory purchase requirement. These elective policies are not getting the benefit of the CRS discount until the premium reaches the full risk rate. So this is true, and it's important for y'all to know. The idea behind this is, well, preferred risk policies were already artificially subsidized. By artificially, I mean they really were subsidized because the amount was much less. But they were subsidized, and so they don't need the financial benefit of the CRS discount right away. So it's just a fact. Okay. Another thing that we learned, and I think FEMA's just being a little bit more forthcoming about this information, rates are set each year. And this is the case, like many other insurance programs. The full risk rate is therefore a moving target. So I'm having a hard time with this concept because it seems to create confusion for communities that, for example, the preferred risk policies. When does the full risk, like if you're on a glide path for 5 years before you reach your full risk rate,
when your full risk rate increases and changes in year 4, what in the world is happening? So the same is true for when you upgrade in a CRS class, you don't get the benefit. No policyholders get the benefit of that CRS class increase until those premiums reach full risk rate. We already knew that, but in light of this changing target, moving target, I'm concerned about this, and we haven't really had a lot of clarity from FEMA on this, but hopefully we'll continue to kind of press on this issue.
Let me ask, you just said that with the increase in a, or a decrease in a rate, you improve your category until, is it all the policies or just the preferred rate wouldn't get, like, go from a 7 to a 5, that extra 10%?
All policies.
All policies.
All policies. So you increase, Newport News increases from 7 to a 5. All policies will not get the benefit of that increased rate until they reach full risk rate. So if they're on a glide path,
Which is different for
They
each
don't-
policy.
So I know I haven't been able to check this yet, but since we just entered at the same time in this whole thing, do you think there's a possibility that our citizens aren't getting the 15% that we, you know what I'm saying? Because we're going from 0 to, 7 April 1st. Is there a chance? We haven't been able to check.
y'all were effective April 1st, 2022.
Just now.
I don't know.
I'm just, all of a sudden now I'm like, oh, wait. So,
But some people our statistics show from FEMA, and hopefully they're at least a little bit accurate on this, is that 45% of policies in year 1 are already at full risk rate.
Okay.
So at least a good portion of your policyholders, even if that is the case of the April 1st thing, hiccuping y'all, should still get that discount because they are already at their full risk rate in year 1. And then it's an additional 40% by year 5, and then the remaining by year 10.
Yeah, it's the majority of people's glide paths are
Short.
Short.
Yeah.
Yeah, are short.
The longer ones are the people who are right on the coast or right by the river, and it's real low, like they're in a real low lying area and susceptible to more risk.
Yeah, in theory.
In theory.
Okay. Everybody, that makes sense to everybody.
Well, and it's the full risk rate minus whatever the CRS discount.
Correct.
would be.
Absolutely.
So it's not, you don't have to go up and then come back down.
No.
You go.
To it.
the goal was already that minus that.
Yeah, you're going,
Yeah.
here's
that
that
would be
full risk
bad.
rate, here's CRS, you're going straight to
We
CRS.
have a graph on that too that we can share.
And it still has, it's the 18% statutory cap on
Absolutely.
Yes.
annual increases as well, so.
Absolutely.
For primary residents, unless you're severe repetitive loss. Severe repetitive loss is 25%.
Yeah, the severe repetitive loss properties are now considered secondary properties in terms of their congressional cap. And I mean, they always were, but it just wasn't really talked about. Okay, I know it's a lot, and we're just gonna continue to monitor and figure it out as we go. Okay, great. So this is the discount explanation guide resource that I was talking about. I'm gonna put this in the chat somehow in a second. And it just shows, you can see the graphic down at the bottom of the image is showing the first floor height. And then a corresponding percentage of discount depending on the foundation type. So it includes slab on grade, basement, crawl space, elevated, not on piers, elevated on piers. And then, and then the best one, elevated without enclosures on piers. So beach houses, no lattice, etc. So this should provide some clarity for y'all-ish. And then the second and third pages of this resource also include flood notes and elevating of mechanicals.
Okay, I have way more stuff I wanted to talk about, but that's okay. We need to do locality updates and be mindful of everybody's time. I'm gonna put some of these resources in the chat. But let's do some locality roundtable discussions. So let's go with the folks in the room first, starting with Chesapeake.
I have nothing to add right now. No updates.
Okay, no worries. James City County.
I'm going to defer to Christy Parrish.
I'm here.
We chatted earlier.
Yeah, Mike always
She's
puts it
on.
on me. No big deal. Just funny.
You're welcome.
Not really big updates with James City County, other than I would just bring to people's attentions, and I don't know if people have experienced issues with VDOT or not. You know, as we're required through DCR and others to review whatever VDOT's doing in the floodplain, we ran into some issues with VDOT complying with all our regulations, specifically if they are constructing something within the floodplain, just to make sure that it is compliant with anchoring and so forth. We basically don't get any response back from VDOT and says that we're, I guess, overacting our authority or whatever. Anyways, I did contact FEMA Region 3 to make sure that as long as we are documenting what we have sent them and we are copying DCR on the issue, that we're covered through our CRS and compliance with the NFRP, whatever it is. My brain's not working. So again, I don't know if anybody else is dealing with VDOT, but they're not essentially providing us enough documentation to ensure that our ordinances are being met with their project. So specifically down at Jamestown Ferry, as well as some road construction going up on Hicks Island Road. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Document, and make sure DCR is copied on whatever documentation that you do provide. I understand that DCR is trying to coordinate with VDOT to make sure they are trying to come into compliance with them. I guess they're trying to meet to see whether or not they have to do what we've asked them to do. And essentially it's just providing that documentation that the construction standards meet the ordinance. I'm sure I rambled way too much.
No, that's really helpful. 10-4. Okay, HRPDC.
So let's see, we're still working on our update to the flood insurance calculator estimated tool. Trying to backwards engineer from the stuff that FEMA's provided on the risk rating 2.0 website. So that's ongoing, slower than we expected, which was, I don't know why I expected anything different, but and it's certainly not going to be great. I don't think it's going to be closer in some places maybe than others, but a lot of the data is publicly accessible, and there are a few that are proprietary. We're just trying to find proxies for that when we can. We have our next kind of round of Get Flood Equivalent outreach media is going to start next month, just in time for hurricane season. I'll be going on the Hampton Road Show to talk flood insurance. Try to encourage people to buy new policies or re-up. It was on the radio, or will be on the radio. I've already recorded the radio, but will be broadcast sometime next month. Doing the same. But I did. Does anybody know what the stat is? I think Rich is still on. Are we going to get a new flood insurance manual that's effective April 1st, 2022? The most recent one up from FEMA on the website is from October.
I don't know. They didn't. That wasn't discussed. Rich, will there be a new flood insurance manual released? No, looking up and asking. I have not heard.
And our next coastal resiliency meeting is going to most likely be in person, and will be June 24th, 10 o'clock.
Okay, Newport News.
We get ready for the recertification this coming June. And we just sent out the annual outreach letter for the 300 category. We didn't even mention anything about risk rating 2 in it, but we say that we did mention about the discount that the citizen policyholders gonna get. We expect to get a lot of calls from them asking about risk rating 2.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, the message is, we're helping you save money.
Yep.
And I think that the more, you know, the public doesn't know what any of this is. And so trying to explain to them the glide path and the nuanced issue of increased class, preferred risk policy, not preferred risk policy, I mean, it's too much. So I would just push out, we're saving you money. This new FEMA rating program is unknown to everybody. And we're doing the only thing that we can do, which is participate in this program to save y'all money. And just be like, you're welcome. And they'll be like, thank you. Not, okay, all right. I launched a poll, fill it out if you can. I'm sure we'll get plenty of credit without it, just FYI. Okay, so let's do folks online. Anybody have an update? Feel free to just unmute yourself. I'm not going to call on people. You can also do it in the chat.
Petersburg, it's not really much to update other than we did apply for round 3 of the CFPF. Question, are there any legislative updates since the last meeting on Reggie? Is that funding safe, or are we still having to keep our fingers crossed on that?
We don't have any updates. The General Assembly is returning on June 1st. And so we will have updates after they convene and the budget is voted on. So no is the answer. Nothing has changed since we last presented on it, right?
Right, and we've also been told that initial reviews have been made of round 3 applications and they have been moved up the chain to be, the way that it works is that the folks in DCR who work specifically on CFPF review it, and then it goes up to SNHR, and then it goes to the governor's office for him to do the final review. And we have been told that the first step of that process has been completed. So we know that the process to release those award amounts has started, and our original anticipation date of those announcements was June 17th. I recently asked if they were still striving for that date, and they said that it is out of their hands now since they did their initial review, and it is now on SNHR top staff and Youngkin's office.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And Daryl, we have heard that the fund is safe. And that's from this director of DCR. The fund is not going anywhere. It is just about how it will be funded. So that's, what's in question. And of course, that's directly tied to Reggie. So the fund will not go away, and it, will be funded however the state can manage it. But the good news is that you haven't learned a new funding resource for nothing, because that is definitely what we were worried about.
Right. Yeah. So the funding amounts, far as we know, the amount is going to stay the same. It's just where the money's coming from.
Yes. Well, we hope the amount will stay in the ballpark. It is not guaranteed.
Gotcha.
The Reggie money is big money.
Gotcha.
I cannot see the state shelling up the same amount of money. Maybe I'm wrong. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the call? Nora Jackson, Northern Virginia Hazard Mitigation Plan is currently under review in the jurisdiction.
public-facing version available for comment June 24th to July 24th. That's great. Congrats. Anybody else?
And I'll add something else too before I forget. Also that I'm not sure if anyone is aware, but FEMA Region 3 is working on a paid advertising campaign for the National Flood Insurance Program that will be launching soon. So it's going to be targeted for, in Virginia, it'll be Fairfax, Alexandria, Arlington, and it kind of goes with this whole thematic history of DC and Philadelphia, and like, let's not let history repeat itself. So there's going to be some interesting materials coming out with that. I've been reviewing some of the the web ads and the radio ads as well. So I can share that with y'all when that comes out in June as well.
That would be great. We'd love to see it.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Just a final reminder, that form that NC had put in the chat is now live, ready to go to fill out. I apologize that it wasn't before. And for the people in the room, we'll make sure it gets to you, so please fill it out as well.
Yeah, and it's at the bottom of the chat for those people online too. All right, that sounds good. We really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.